Hi, so today we'll be diagnosing a computer with no backlight. This computer apparently turns on and is showing no backlight. There's two things to look out for when a customer says they've got no backlight in the system. One, is it actually a backlight system? Is it actually a backlight that's the problem? Or two, is the screen actually getting any data sent to it? So it could actually be the computer's not turning on, or it could be that there's no backlight. So I'll show you how to diagnose that, a simple, easy way. So first we'll turn it on, and if we hear the chime, we know that it's in fact turning on. So we can hear a chime, so we definitely cannot see anything. So what you want to do is you want to grab a torch or some sort of light source, and you want to shine it in the back. So I've got this torch here, so we'll shine that in the back here, and as you can see that there is a Apple logo coming up. So what this tells me is there definitely is a backlight issue. So I do get jobs sometimes where the customer brings the computer in and it's not actually a backlight problem, it's something else. So what we'll do is we'll just get straight to it. We can see the Apple icon there. So we'll turn the torch off, turn it back on. So there is actually a backlight problem. So we're going to turn this computer off so it doesn't blow up while we're working on it. Okay, and we will open it up. Okay, so like this customer always sends me his computers without the screws in them. And it hasn't shut itself off yet. So we'll just hold down on the power button and it's turned itself off. Next thing we want to do is we want to remove the battery. So just pull the battery connector out, like so. The last thing we want to do is using our tweezers and working around this board, and we short a component to ground or to whatever. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look over the board, and the particular area we're looking at is the LCD connector, where the LCD actually connects to the logic board itself. Thanks to those of you who may actually find some of my content interesting. I'll try my best to keep like-minded technicians motivated, and if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to ask me. So the area that I'm looking over right now is the LCD connector, which is this guy here. So what we want to do is first of all we want to check the LCD connector itself to make sure that we're not dealing with a bad LCD connector. So a bad LCD connector can actually be the fault for a backlight not working. So we'll have a quick look at that. We may not even have to have a look at schematics here. Okay, so we open this up here, and I need to cut my nails again. Yeah, so there is a little bit of gunk around here. Nothing to be overly concerned about, but I can see some gunk there, and we're going to pull out the LCD connector and inspect that. And straight away, I can see that the LCD connector has a problem with it. We'll try to zoom in a bit more. So right there, so this LCD connector, something's gone wrong. What we'll try to do is we'll see if we can clean up that area. Bear in mind that this isn't the actual repair, and I do think that this connector will need to be replaced completely. Because that pin is not touching this side. I'll just get a little brush and give it a brush, see if that helps anything. Okay, so what this tells me is that somehow this LCD connector has shorted itself. I believe it's probably from liquid, because you can see that there is some green corrosion on this LCD connector right about there in that area, and just down here as well. So liquid has probably gotten into this LCD connector at some stage. We'll have another look on the board to see if we can find any traces of liquid, and I can actually tell straight away just by looking in this computer that liquid has gotten in here. So I'll show you. So right there. So this is a sort of a sponge that has metallics in it, and you can tell liquid has gotten in here because it started to rusted away and corrode this away. So liquid has gotten into the system, most definitely. Okay, moving on. So the customer will need to replace their LCD connector. And the second thing we'll check is the fuse itself. So it does look like somebody's been poking around the fuse. I did show my customer how to check to see if a backlight fuse was the problem, and he has checked this. He didn't say anything, so maybe the fuse is good. But what we're going to do is we're going to get our multimeter. And here's our multimeter here. Okay, so we'll put it into the off position. The one that we're interested in is we want to test this in beat mode, which is that guy there. So it's got the volume sort of an icon, and it also has the diode measurement icon just to its right. Okay, so when we touch the two probes together, these two probes together, we're going to hear a beeping sound. And what that tells us is if there's continuity between one point and the next. So with a fuse, there should be a direct path from each of its points. So when we put these two probes on each end of our fuse, it should make a beeping sound. So I'll quickly test it. And there's no beep, which means that that fuse is blown. Okay, so on these computers here, on the majority of MacBook Pros, you'll have, well, especially the 2009s up to 2011s and 12s, you'll find a orange looking component that's got a P on it. I don't know what the P stands for, but that's the fuse. And just to this side of the fuse, you'll see this this component here, and that's the LP8550, which is the backlight driver. So when diagnosing a fault with your backlight on a MacBook Pro, some of the main areas you want to look for is the LCD connector, this guy here, this is the LCD cable, and the LCD connector, the LCD backlight driver, and the LCD fuse. This guy here doesn't usually blow, but today it has. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look underneath the backlight driver just to make sure there's nothing blown there as well, because if it's blown there as well, we'll have to replace that LP8550. So how we check underneath the LP8550, we have to actually move the microscope over the floor and look at it on a angle. So that side looks fine. It's actually the side that you can't see is going to be the most difficult. Actually, no, that's fine. So this LP8550 backlight driver chip does seem to be okay. And what we'll also do is when we check it, we'll actually plug in a test system just to make sure that the backlight is indeed working. So we will fix this, test it with another screen, and then inform the customer that that LCD connector must be replaced. Otherwise it's going to just blow that fuse again. So let's remove the backlight fuse for starters. Turn on our equipment, our hot air gun, our soldering irons, and our fume extractor. Okay, we'll heat up our hot air gun. Now when you're working on these computers, you really want to be using something like Kapton tape, which is this stuff here, so you can protect your customers' plastic components, especially if this is the first time doing this stuff. Otherwise you'll just make a big mess, and you'll end up burning stuff that you shouldn't be burning. So don't do what I'm doing and just go straight in with your hot air gun. Cover it with some Kapton tape or with anything you can use. You can even use a metal plate or something that just sits over the component like that, or like that, so you're not burning anything else. Okay, so we're nearly up to temperature. We're at 530 degrees. Get our tweezers and let's remove this guy. Just preheat around the area a little bit. Okay, and that little P is gone. Next thing we want to do is we want to add a little bit of flux. Just a little bit. And we'll get some solder, and we will add solder to the joint. and that's just to remove any impurities from the factory. They use lead-free solder, which burns at a higher temperature. We don't want that stuff on the board. It's a little bit more difficult to work with, especially if you're using a cheap soldering iron or something. Okay, the next step is not that important, but I just want to show that it's always good to wick away makes things nice and clean, and then you can be certain all that gunk is gone. Okay, we'll add a little bit of flux and we will get another fuse. There they are. This one is green, and they don't actually have to have a P on it. In all honesty, you can use a resistor. All this is a 0 ohm resistor, so you can use one of those black resistors if you've got a resistor book. So with these fuses, what we want to do is we want to make it look as factory as possible. So we're going to use a soldering iron to attach it. How we use a soldering iron to attach these guys is we add a little bit of solder to the tip, and we put a little bit of solder on the first joint that we want to work with. So let's start with this guy here. Okay, so we've got some solder on that side. We'll get our little P. Get it as straight as possible, and then we can tack the other side down. Once that side's down, then we can fill this in, and that's it. One thing we will check for is a short to ground on that fuse, which is probably something I should have done before putting it on, but I'm pretty certain that that should be fine. So just a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on a Q-tip. And this is just to clean off any flux. Bearing in mind the flux that I use, NC559. Yes, NC559, which is made by Amtech, is non-conductive, so it's also a non-clean flux. But I have had customers complain about flux, so we just remove it now. That was a long time ago, before I got an ultrasonic machine. When I say a long time ago, I'm talking about 7-8 years ago. Okay, we will test that again in beat mode. Turn off our extractor. And we're getting a beep. Okay. So I will get another screen and test its backlight. Yep.
Huh?
Yep, I am. So I probably should have checked this before and got myself a screen ready. Okay, we're going to do something ridiculous and we're going to turn it on without the LCD connector plugged in. put it into voltage mode, and I just want to see what voltages we're getting on the backlight fuse. Make sure it hasn't blown already. So it actually works. I'm still going to tell the customer that the LCD connector is damaged, and that I do recommend that they replace it. But as you can see, that backlight is now working. Before it wasn't. That was an easy fix. Next time we do a LCD connector, hopefully we get to change an LP8550. What I can tell you is that I've changed many LP8550s, more than 1,000, and I've probably only changed 20-30 backlight fuses, so there's just an indication on how much these things actually get damaged. So that's that job. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something from this.